Hey guys, it's about that time of year where I round up all the movies that I've seen in the past year and give you a countdown on my top 10 favorite films. As usual, I have a list of honorable mentions. Movies that either just missed the list or ones that I really like certain aspects of, which include Straight Outta Compton, Spotlight, Mad Max Fury Road, Star Wars Force Awakens, Dope, The Night Before, Kurt Cobain Montage of Heck, Big Short, Legend, and Macbeth. And like every year, there are movies that got a lot of good reviews that I didn't get around to seeing yet, such as Steve Jobs, Room, Carol, and Brooklyn. And I'm sure there's a bunch of others too. So here we go, top 10 movies of 2015. Number 10, Anomalisa. For those who don't know, Anomalisa is filmed with puppets and uses stop-motion animation. And the majority of the characters in the movie are voiced by Tom Noonan, the guy who played Dollarhide in Manhunter. This movie has a relatively simple plot, but there's a lot more depth than I thought there'd be to it. I presumed that the name of the movie was just some obscure Italian word that I never heard of before, but the actual meaning of the name is pretty clever. And even the whole gimmick of having one actor playing most of the characters is kind of given a meaning within the context of the movie. At least in my interpretation, anyway. There's a lot of good humor in the film, and there are some really trippy moments too. But in a lot of ways the movie is pretty realistic, for want of a better term. I don't just mean the uncanny valley nature of the puppets, but there are a lot of weird little moments that happen in everyday life that are captured pretty well here. And the main character is oddly relatable too. And there's also a sex scene involving the puppets, which, I don't quite know what to make of that. This movie is not for everybody, but I really enjoyed it, mainly for its creativity and its weirdness. Number 9, The Revenant. What The Revenant lacks in terms of script and story, it makes up in its visual set pieces, cinematography, and performances. The standout moments to me are the bear attack that everybody's talking about, and the opening battle scene that reminds me of the Normandy landing scene from Saving Private Ryan. And I don't know if DiCaprio will ever win an Oscar, but he probably deserves it for this movie. Number 8, Beasts of No Nation. This movie reminds me of that scene in Lost when Mr. Echo was a kid in Nigeria, and these guys force his brother to kill an old man, and then Mr. Echo does it, and then he gets abducted. To me, this movie is Mr. Echo's origin story, the movie. And if you know me, that's like the highest praise I can ever give a film. But in all seriousness, this movie is very dark. There's a lot of really disturbing moments to it. The main actor did an amazing job for his age. Idris Elba plays a character that's kinda similar to Joseph Kony in some ways. But I found him somewhat likable to an extent. Which is a weird thing to say considering some of the despicable things he does in the movie. But that probably comes down to Idris Elba's charismatic performance. This is definitely a powerful film, but just don't expect an easy watch. Number 7, Creed. In a lot of ways this movie is structurally similar to the first film, but that doesn't bother me. Michael B. Jordan is really good here. I actually like the romance subplot with him and the love interest, but his most enjoyable interactions for me were with Rocky. People like to make fun of Stallone's acting, but he was actually really great in this movie. Also, the fight scenes were very impressive. In particular, the first one, which looked like it was done in one take, and had punches that looked realistic. They've come away from some of the older movies where you can literally see the punches missing like a WWE match. Creed ranks up high in terms of the Rocky movies for me, and I'm really interested to see what they do with the sequel. Number 6, Inside Out. I'm a big fan of Pixar, but their last 3 films really haven't been able to match that stamp of quality that they're known for, in my opinion. But with Inside Out, they're back on their A-game as far as I'm concerned. I haven't seen The Good Dinosaur yet, but apparently it's not as good as this. The premise of Inside Out itself is actually really great. I like all the designs of the different emotions, and the interesting concepts that the film introduces are explored very well too. From pretty much the opening scene onwards, I had a big smile on my face, and I enjoyed myself the entire time. Number 5, The Martian. I remember a few days after the movie came out, I saw a few articles online where people were like, hey, look at these idiots who thought the movie was based on a true story. But I have to admit, there were a few split seconds during the movie where I was like, wow, did this guy really grow potatoes on Mars? And then I remembered, oh, it's a science fiction movie about a guy living on Mars. I put that down partially to me being an idiot, but that's also a testament to the fact that the science in this movie is told in such a relatable way that it actually seems pretty plausible at times. In addition, you have a great ensemble cast, amazing visuals, and it's also pretty funny, which I didn't expect going in. Number 4, Kingsman: The Secret Service. This movie is dumb and over the top, and I loved almost every minute of it. I think Samuel Jackson's character in this is probably my favorite villain in a movie all year. He's ridiculous, but he's insanely entertaining. It quite possibly has the best action sequence in the movie all year too, in that scene with the church. I also really like the way it plays around with the genre conventions of spy movies. You know, it celebrates the cool things about them and makes fun of the silly things about them. And the fact that this movie is so high on my list and the new Bond movie Spectre was like, good, not great, means that Kingsman is definitely doing something right. Number 3, Sicario. About 2/3 of the way through this movie, I was thinking, yeah, this movie is pretty good. And then the last, like, half an hour or so happens, and I was just blown away. It's kind of hard to talk about exactly what I loved about this movie without giving away spoilers. But I really wasn't prepared for the direction that this movie takes. A common criticism I saw was that Emily Blunt's character didn't really have anything to do with the last act. But I was glad that Benicio del Toro gets his time to shine, and he ends up basically stealing the show. Throughout the movie, all you get is like glimpses of Benicio del Toro's character, and his whole backstory is a mystery. And then when his character comes to the forefront, it's just amazing. Suffice to say, I can't wait for the spin-off about Benicio del Toro's character that's apparently going to happen. Number 2, Hateful Eight. I think for some reason lately it's become almost popular to make fun of Tarantino and to say he's a hack or he's overrated. But I still love this guy's movies. I had no problem with the pacing, which a lot of people seem to complain about. You know, I was hooked by the start. I love the mystery elements in the second act. And I love the typical, Tarantino final climax near the end. Every single actor does a great job, but the standouts to me were Samuel Jackson and Walton Goggins. With the exception of Death Proof, I've either really liked or loved each of Tarantino's movies. And I loved The Hateful Eight. And number 1, Ex Machina. I'm a giant fan of Charlie Brooker's show Black Mirror, and Ex Machina feels like an extra long episode of that show. I'm a sucker for a good, dark, but clever science fiction movie. I love stories about AIs becoming self-aware, which really seems to be a common theme in sci-fi lately. There's loads of stories about that. But this is one of the better takes on that in recent memory. The 3 central characters are really fascinating. Domhnall Gleeson's character brings a relatable naivety to the movie. You have Alicia Vikander as Ava, whose character's intentions are fairly ambiguous, and she also has a great visual design. And then there's Oscar Isaac's character, who to me is probably the most interesting character, in terms of his dialogue and his motivation. You know, at times you just want to like him, but you don't know if you can trust him or what he's up to. It's an interesting movie to look at in terms of morality, because nobody in this movie is totally good or evil. Ex Machina is essentially a movie about figuratively trying to get inside somebody's head, but it almost becomes a Mexican standoff of characters trying to analyze and figure out each other. But all I know is this movie found a way inside my head, because it was the first film I saw this year and it was still the best film I saw by the end of the year. So that's my top 10 movies of 2015, and thanks for watching.